The Mongol Empire conquered everything from Hungary to Korea in less than a century. But a small island nation they should have overrun in weeks became the one place their expansion permanently stopped. Popular history credits a divine wind, the kamikaze, that destroyed their fleet in 1281. But storms do not destroy fleets at anchor unless something has already made them vulnerable. The samurai did not wait for a miracle. Their tactics and coastal defenses created that vulnerability first. This is how they broke the Mongol invasion before the storm ever arrived. Popular history often cites a 200 versus 40,000 ratio. It is wrong. At Tsushima, the deputy governor So Sukekuni led exactly 80 mounted samurai and their retainers. This is documented in the Soshukafu, the genealogical record of the So clan. If you count foot soldier retainers, the total force was likely 200 to 300, but the core warrior class numbered only 80. At Iki, the defense consisted of about 100 samurai. The pattern holds: small, elite forces against overwhelming numbers. This was not a military victory. It was a suicidal warning. The Moko Shurai Ekotoba, a scroll painted by the surviving samurai Takezaki Suenaga, depicts Sukekuni's final charge in vivid detail. The scroll describes it as a frightful devotion to duty that stunned Mongol scouts. These were not wins. They were statements that Japan would not surrender at any cost. The conflict began with a single arrow. Samurai tradition held that combat started with a whistling arrow to challenge a worthy opponent. It was a system built on individual glory and personal honor. The Mongol response was massed volleys from behind shield walls. They had no concept of single combat. This was a tactical system built for steppe warfare and massed armies. The Yuan Shi records their confusion. They saw Japanese warriors seeking individual duels in the middle of a beach landing as foolish and inefficient. The 1274 invasion revealed terrifying Chinese inventions. Gunpowder bombs called Tetsu Hao. These ceramic grenades filled with explosive powder were the first explosions most samurai had ever heard. Their horses panicked and bolted. This forced the samurai to dismount and fight on foot. While it felt catastrophic, it turned out to be tactically useful behind defensive positions. At Iki, the Mongols used calculated terror to break Japanese morale. They took prisoners, threaded wire through their palms, and strung them between ships as living shields. When Japanese defenders saw their countrymen displayed this way, records say they dropped their bows and charged with swords. They fought to end the suffering of the captured. This was designed to break the Japanese spirit before the real fighting even began. Tsushima and Iki fell within days, but they fell fighting. Every Japanese source agrees not one warrior surrendered. The Goryeo-sa, a Korean chronicle, notes that Mongol officers reported the Japanese fought like rabid dogs. These Thermopylae moments bought time and delivered critical intelligence. Japan's leaders learned 3 facts. The Mongols would not accept surrender. They had weapons that broke traditional tactics, and they could be delayed by determined resistance. The first invasion landed on November 2nd, 1274. By November 19th, the fleet was already retreating. This was a reconnaissance in force. The Mongols met such ferocious resistance they realized conquering Japan would be costly. The withdrawal created the breathing room Japan needed to rethink its defense strategy. The 7 years between invasions transformed Japan's defense into a coordinated national effort. The most decisive change was the Genko Borui, the Great Stone Wall. This was a tactical deletion of the Mongol army's primary advantage, cavalry mobility. Archaeological surveys confirm a barrier built along Hakata Bay. It stretched 20 kilometers and stood up to 3 meters high. Workers fitted stone blocks with lime mortar 50 meters from the shore. This required conscripting thousands of peasants under samurai supervision. It was a mobilization of national resources unprecedented in medieval Japan. The wall's genius lay in its simplicity. The Mongols had conquered 2 continents on horseback, but you cannot charge a stone wall from the deck of a boat. Korean shipwrights had built the invasion fleet for rapid landing, not siege warfare. Without secure beach access, nearly 20,000 horses remained trapped on ships. They were cramped, seasick, and vulnerable to disease. Mongol commander Arakan reported to Kublai Khan that his cavalry was useless. Their doctrine relied on mobility and encirclement. Both became impossible against a fixed barrier. So far, intelligence, fortifications, logistics. Now it gets kinetic. Subscribe if you want to see how small forces exploit these advantages in practice. When the fleet arrived in June 1281, the wall had transformed the strategic equation. A lightning raid became a naval siege. The Goryosa describes the scene as a city besieged on water. For 6 weeks, Mongol ships anchored offshore while troops packed the decks in the summer heat. Logistical analysis reveals the crisis. A fleet this size required tens of thousands of liters of fresh water daily. Even a minimum of 1 liter per man was a staggering demand for 40,000 troops and animals. Korean supply runs from 200 kilometers away could not sustain this. Without beachheads to dig wells, the math was fatal. Disease spread rapidly through the confined spaces. Dysentery and fever ripped through crews. Research in Little Need of Divine Intervention by Thomas Conlin documents mortality rates reaching 20% among Korean sailors before the storm hit. Supplies dwindled. Summer heat spoiled water and food. Morale collapsed. What should have been an invasion force became a floating prison. Japanese command structure had also evolved. The fractured response of 1274 gave way to centralized coordination under Hojo Tokimune. Direct orders mandated cooperation between rival clans. Recruitment expanded beyond traditional structures. This was a unified command ready for total war. With the Mongols trapped offshore, Japanese forces exploited their immobility. Small skiffs slipped through the bay on moonless nights. The Suenaga scrolls depict warriors boarding enemy vessels under fire. Kawano Mikiari took an arrow to the shoulder, but killed 3 enemies and captured an officer. Suenaga's own scrolls show him charging through a storm of Mongol bombs. In close quarters, the Mongol composite bow became a liability. The Yuan Shi records their frustration. Their archers could not draw for fear of hitting their own men. On cramped decks at night, samurai swordsmanship was decisive. These were systematic tactics repeated nightly across the bay. Archaeological evidence from the Takashima shipwrecks supports these accounts. Burn marks on hulls show fire was a primary weapon. Samurai brought oil and torches, turning the clustered Mongol fleet into a tinderbox. Weapon damage patterns matched Japanese sword types against Mongol armor. The Goryeosa provides the administrative accounting. Of the Korean contingent on the eastern route, 7,500 never returned. This was a 30% loss rate before the typhoon appeared on August 15, 1281. 6 weeks of constant harassment had already crippled the fleet's fighting strength. The raids forced the Mongols to cluster their ships for defense. This increased disease and made fire attacks more effective. Anchors dragged in the shallow bay. Ships collided and hulls weakened. Crews became demoralized and exhausted. When the typhoon struck on August 15, 1281, it found a fleet that could not maneuver or escape. The storm was not the hero of this story. It was the executioner for an army already broken by logistics, disease, and relentless aggression. The Mongol Empire had conquered everything from Hungary to Vietnam, but Japan taught them that even the greatest land power could be defeated by denying them the land itself. Japan broke the Mongol invasion with a wall, night raids, and 6 weeks of sustained pressure. The 200 versus 40,000 myth misses the point. Small forces created the conditions for catastrophe. This was not a miracle. It was medieval trench warfare at sea. Subscribe if you want more videos that separate what actually happened from what makes a good story.